in the end about making money.
Nirvana plus making money through innovation.
Extremely pleased and privileged to get this opportunity to moderate a session with such stalwarts in our session and our panel. I just wanted to make a humble submission. Actually, I was not in a position to attend this very important and very topical program since yesterday morning, but I'm sure this must have been a very enriching experience for all the participants. Now, given the context of the program of innovation ecosystem, I suppose there must have been a gradual build-up since yesterday morning. And I hope you will not disagree with me that when it comes to the climax, it is now. Now, I'll give you examples, and I can give examples with statistics if you would want, but then certainly this is a session which I only have to convene, moderate, not speak. Otherwise, I have a tendency to speak a lot, but then I think I'll be doing injustice, severe injustice to my panelists. Actually, it is their day and your day, because I would want to again have sufficient time for Q&A, and I think the organizers would allow me that kind of a discretion so that I can moderate and be almost like a class teacher or a schoolmaster and tell, stop it, even though they are very senior to me, but I suppose they will give me this liberty. So I'll start straight away. We'll have a very simple format here. In fact, given the sequence in which the members have been listed, so if the members would allow me and agree with it, so I would certainly like to invite Mr. Amitabh Srivastava. Now, again, one humble request. I'll dispense with the mandatory or routine introduction of these very eminent people, for the simple reason that you can Google and you'll find illustrious history there. So I'll not get into all that. So I'll certainly request Mr. Amitabh Srivastava, the CEO of CSIR Tech, and in the context in which this particular program has been set, I would request him to actually speak on the quality and extent of commercializable ideas from academia as also from the government research laboratories across India, and how, given his background, how various funding options have been crucial to the success of those commercializations. Mr.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Wali.
You can as well come here if you want, or maybe speak from your place.
Is it okay? I'm just
Perfect.
I'm comfortable either way. I also like to stand and talk, but maybe it might be just easier for logistics here. So thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you to Vicky and for inviting me here to speak. My name is Amitabh Srivastava, and I head an organization called as CSIR Tech. This organization does two things. It invests in startup companies which are science focused, and it helps government funded labs and other academic institutions in India to commercialize their technologies, very similar to, if you're familiar with the term NRDC. So we're similar to them, except we're a private limited company. We have zero government funding. So we're not dependent on your taxpayers' money. So we spend money of people who are willing to take risks to help commercialize. We think there's a huge opportunity. In the context of the subject we're here to talk about, which is a spin-off, I just have a quick question. Just raise your hand if you don't understand, if you're hearing the word spin-off for the first time. Could you just raise your hand if you've not heard this term? Because I don't want to assume anything. Thank you. Okay, so everybody understands. Can I ask you to define what's a spin-off? You didn't raise your hand. You, sir. Yeah, you. Okay, so you don't know what's a spin-off. Okay, maybe it's a good idea, because the subject is around spin-off. It may be a good idea to just have a quick definition of the word spin-off. If you are an entrepreneur, so spin-off is usually associated in the context in which you're talking is with a research or an academic institution. Okay, so that's a spin-off. A spin-off is also a startup company. A startup company need not be a spin-off, but all spin-offs in general are a startup. Okay, so if you got incubated at a lab or an academic institution, started by a professor or a student, then you are a spin-off company and you are out to make money. Okay, so this is not about science. I'm sure science is great, technology is great, but it's in the end about making money. Okay, so if you're going to make money, you'll help the institution and the scientists create wealth for the organization. Yeah, so this is about that subject. Professor Walia, can I ask you your last question to me? Just repeat that.
How have funding options been responsible for commercializing some commercial successes from academia as well as from research?
Thank you very much. So I think while there are a lot of government schemes that are available for funding a startup, and the previous sessions before have already talked about, in India, if you look at private equity funding, okay, which is not grant, this is not about, sorry to use the Hindi word daan, okay, this is about somebody putting in money to return an investment, return on the investment. So for science-focused businesses, there are not many options in the private sector. Okay, you will find all kinds of venture capitalists and the angel investors in India looking at software or software-enabled companies. Maybe they are into retail and things like that, because there is more, there's a faster rate of return that you will get. So there are not many options that are available today from a private equity perspective to look at funding. That does not mean that there are no investments. In fact, there are quite a few investments that have been made, but they have not been made in an organized fashion, where there is a fund with a time frame in which the return has to be given. And I think we are one of the first, as Nirankar mentioned, we are one of the first funds to have received monies from SIDBI, Canara Bank, Gharda Chemicals, quite a few eminent individuals in India into a 50 crore fund, and this will be used to invest in startups and spin-offs. So in terms of the options, Dr. Wali, I have not come across many options in the private sector. However, SIDBI, TDB, and quite a few other funds do exist in the equity investment.
Maybe I have a follow-up question on that. Amitabh, in terms of, can you give a couple of examples of some of the real successes in terms of commercialization?
Sure. How many of you have seen the movie Three Idiots? Everybody, yeah? Okay, you remember the robot? Do you know which company made that? It's a company called IdeaForge, okay? IdeaForge is a company started by students in IIT Bombay. They got their second round of funding right now. That's one of the success stories, by the way, okay, from the perspective of having raised money, and I'm sure that that's a company that's going to go places. I actually wrote down names of a few other companies. So there is a company called Unique Flux, Shantini, YM Biosciences here in Delhi. There's a company called Innovative Industrial Equipment Private Limited, again started by a scientist who was ex-NEERI scientist. NEERI is the National Environmental Engineering Research Institute. So there are a few examples. Out of, let's say, 5 lakh companies that may have started in the last 10 years, not more than 100 would be those that have been, that can qualify as a spin-off today.
Thank you. Thank you, Amitabh, for very nicely and succinctly giving an idea about organized private sector funding for commercialization, as also for helping the startups grow. It's always very often said that India has been lagging way behind the benchmarks, the United States of America, when it came to the startup culture. It started in the early 80s. I mean the organized way, big way, Silicon Valleys and Route 128 and all that. And it said that, India has been lagging behind. In fact, you said it early on that we are still in the learning stage, we are at an early stage. I have a slight disconnect with that, because I believe India has been entrepreneurial throughout. We have been generally very innovative, but the context in which he's speaking is about innovation-led or technology-led entrepreneurship. But that's where we perhaps have been lacking, because I always give the examples that we still do not have a Google, still do not have a Facebook, still do not have a Hewlett-Packard, Cisco in our ranks. Only once we have to showcase them as startups from India, then perhaps what you say is that we are lagging behind. Indeed true.
Not lagging, the future is bright.
Future is bright. I agree entirely with you on that. But nonetheless, thanks to the public support, when it's the government support, when NSTDB was created, we had organized support being extended to institutions in India to actually build capacity towards incubation. In India, incubators are slowly and steadily catching up. We have about 100, I may be wrong by a few points here and there, in business incubators, technology business incubators in the country, associated primarily with academic institutions. And that is the flavor of the season, academic startups. The other point about ecosystem was the technology transfer organizations, TTOs. Now there we are woefully short. Actually not short, we hardly have any. We only have one, that is IIT Delhi's FITT, with which I am associated, fortunate to be associated, and there's yet another one, SID, with IIC Bangalore. At other places, we have other mechanisms, but not formal mechanisms to enable commercialization, to enable innovations, to enable startups or research spin-offs, as Amitabh so very well said it. Now, in this context, Professor P.V. Sharma, who has been for long associated with Delhi Technical University, DTU, or earlier Delhi College of Engineering, has to his credit of having supported a large number of innovations, a large number of startups. So I would actually leave the floor to him to actually explain how, or maybe he can give some good examples of student faculty innovators from the institutions which he has led very ably, and also maybe dwell upon how the university authorities at that point in time enabled that kind of a transformation. Professor Sharma, please.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be here once again and very pleased to share the experience which I have of working in IIT Delhi, Delhi College of Engineering, Delhi Technological University, and now at Amity University, Gurgaon. At the outset, I extend to you very warm greetings of the Amity University fraternity. We are the innovation partner to this summit, and we feel very happy in part and parcel in sharing our experience how to spin off startups, especially from the campuses of university and institutions of higher learning. In fact, I consider myself highly privileged that I could witness the rise of FITT, which is being headed by Mr. Anil Bali in IIT Delhi. When IITs were reviewed by Government of India in the mid-80s, they gave us a big blow, saying that you have been always focusing on excellence, excellence, excellence. What about relevance? The first time I was a professor in IIT Delhi, we heard the word relevance. Otherwise, most of the academicians, they focus on excellence. And then the government said, focus on relevance. And one of the important things which came out of that focus was establishment of Foundation of Innovation and Technology Transfer in IIT Delhi in 1992. The reason I'm telling you all this is that if you really want to give a boost to the spin-off of the startups from the university and campuses and institutions of higher learning, it would be very important for us to change the gear. And the gear we need to change is cause a strategic departure in our educational and research methodology or pedagogy, shifted from focus on excellence to focus on relevance. The minute you do it, you will discover a new meaning of your engagement in the university system, in the institution of higher learning. When I was in IIT, Dr. Raghav, some people are witness here, I said to IIT fellows, you will only give me my salary, nothing else. All my funding for research and innovation and development will come from my own resources, which I will of course bid for and win for. This is what the best practice I learned at that time from Birmingham, from where I had my own doctorate degree. I found that the professors survive on the grants and funding which come from the industry and from the government funding agencies. This is how I began. But then, when it comes to giving support to the startups and spinning off the value and worth of the research and whole lot of effort which we invest in our university system, I learned a lot while going to Delhi College of Engineering, later at Delhi Technological University. I found that the students are most innovative. Forgive me if I say they are more innovative and more creative than the professors of the institution. I am hesitant to say this, but this is a reality. This reality was a new reality to me because I had a direct contact with the students now as the principal and director of Delhi College of Engineering. They will come to me with their ideas. They will first go to the head of department. He will say, no, I have nothing to do with it. Go to the teacher. He said, I'm very busy in preparing for the lecture. They come to the principal. Principal says, I'll have a cup of tea with you and talk to you because you have a brilliant idea. At that time, they were trying to solve the problem of pollution of Delhi. They were jumping on their feet. Why can't we think of CNG as a solution? I said, okay, we'll conduct an experiment to find out what CNG can do. And believe it or not, the very first experiment of using CNG in our automobile laboratory revealed that our measurements tools are wrong because there was no carbon monoxide which was being recorded or particulate matter being recorded on the gadget which I had. Now, this is how, in fact, so the support comes to you the minute you look at the relevance, identify the need. Mr. Denton was hammering the point here that identify the product rather than technology. I would say identify the need. Configure your product around that need. Then, of course, go in a very systematic and strategic way to develop the scientific and technological knowledge which later results into technology. And then, of course, go for the support. Unfortunately, we are in a good time as well as bad time. In my days, minting money or making money was not something which we will talk about in the university system. Today, I find that everybody is saying, including Dr. Amitabh Srivastava, make money. Now, if I have to make money and if I say this in education campuses, people will say Dr. Sharma has gone mad. So I would, in India also, Dr. Mahajan, making money was not something for which we will die. Getting nirvana is something we would like to die for. So I want to combine making money with the nirvana of 21st century. I want nirvana from the bad air quality of Delhi. I want nirvana from the water pollution which I have in plenty in my country. I want nirvana from the power cuts which I have in plenty in my country. I want nirvana from the traffic jams of metropolitan cities as well as capital cities of Delhi. And I want nirvana for a whole lot of excessive cost and waste which we unnecessarily generate in our manufacturing sector in the industry. I want nirvana from that. So my purpose, I think in a university campus, especially in Amity now, we have understood this game that we have to sensitize the student community about the nirvana alongside with making money. The twin effort together would in fact attract our youngsters. Youngsters are not attracted about nirvana. If you tell them I'll give you mukti, you will not appear again. You will have no chance to study in IIT in the next life. They will say, hell with your nirvana, I want to come back again and next time I want to go to a better IIT. I've gone this time to the 5th or 6th one. So I have to now sell the strategy of nirvana plus making money through innovations, through startups, which I have to spin off from my institution. You know how I did it? I may be considered as the most successful vice chancellor of the country in terms of spinning off innovations. After Paytm, which you are seeing level every day, in fact, is a graduate of Delhi College of Engineering, 1995. I became director in 1990. People like him, in great number we generated, supported them. When I became Delhi Technological University, I played the master card. Everybody want money for support for the student innovations. Where would that money come from? They go to the government says, we have no money for you, we have money for your teacher. If he comes, we will support. Now government has, luckily we are in good time where government is saying that we will support startups. So what I did there in 2009, I had about 15 crores of rupees with me. I looked at and I found this money as student money, which means this was the surplus generated from the student fees, which were for sports, extracurricular activities, and a whole lot of other student services over a period of almost 70 years. So I immediately put that money into a corpus and called it Innovation Fund for Delhi Technological University. Now, if you have 15 crores of rupees in a corpus, straight away on day one, then the sheer interest of that money would be enough for the vice chancellor to support the innovations of the kind which the student want to pursue. And that's why we could produce the most innovative design for the unmanned aerial vehicle, the award we got in Georgia. We could produce the first hybrid car of India. We could produce the first super mileage of car of India. We could even design and develop an aeroplane which was the next generation drone in partnership with Lockheed Martin at Delhi Technological University, make it even airworthy, go to that extent, primarily because we had that seed money with us. I would not go to the government for asking money at that time because I knew they will ridicule. They will say, how good is your idea? Have you taken written permission, written consent of the IIT professors or some experts who would say this idea is good? Where would my student run around? So I think the mantra I'm trying to sell you in this panel discussion is that you have to think of the cuff strategies of supporting innovations. Now, innovation, for example, if I can give you an idea, you can start thinking in terms of a small proportion of your tuition fees. Call it innovation fee for every student who come to a institution of higher learning, and put that money as an innovation fund for your institution or university, support your students for innovations and spin up a startup from there. Of course, sign a deal with them that if they become rich, they will share part of their equity with the university. The university also in turn then becomes really self-sufficient. I could make Delhi Technological University self-sufficient in 5 years, partly because I could generate a lot of money from the research and development as well as from the effort which we invested. Even the sheer fee has gone up from something like 3 crores of rupees, what it was in 2009, to something like 100 crore by the time I retired from there as Vice Chancellor. Now, I could then sell the business model that, look here, knowledge can be translated into wealth and you could become in fact a self-propagating machinery, churning out ideas, and selling this composite strategy of nirvana plus minting money to the student community. I have at least 100 strong entrepreneurs now visible within NCR who could rise and say that we are millionaires looking at this. The Bingi 5 fellow has purchased in fact a company in America, Paytm has already gone up, several others. I want to do the same thing in Amity University also. I find that in the private university, if I go and ask my chancellor that I need money for innovation, he would be looking here and there and also thinking whether I should give this money or not. Luckily, I have a better chancellor than many chancellors in the country. The fellow himself has been a venture capitalist. So he would put some money. That's how I could make the aeroplane which I am exhibiting here in the exhibition. This is the next generation drone, my friend, not yet made even in America, because gyroscopically mounted twin rotors on a delta wing is not yet available anywhere in the world. And this is all student effort, undergraduate student. What I did to carefully identify and inspire students to think of projects for their final year as well as mini and minor projects which should be originating from the innovative ideas. In fact, we set up in our university, at University Gurgaon, Innovation Day. Each year we celebrate. We have on-spot innovation contest so that the ideas could be identified and supported. We have set up innovation gallery where their innovative product could be exhibited, and we are supporting them to spin off a startup from a whole lot of effort which is invested at the undergraduate, postgraduate level and doctorate level. My friend, we are in a very good time. We are in a good time because we have a government which is supportive of growth of startups. It never had been earlier. We have a government which has money for research and development, primarily for the needs which we have to identify and address to. There is a whole lot of money today for solving the problem of air quality of Delhi. A whole lot of money is available for solving the problem of energy security. A whole lot of money is there to solve the problem of asthma and the diseases which we have arising out of our misendeavors in many cases. So there is no dearth of money. Question is, can you at the university level generate that ecosystem where you start saying, sir, initially don't give me any money, just pat my back and say that you're doing a good job. Once I become stronger and make my aeroplane, I will of course sign a deal with my industry, and next level of that would be re-engineering the same thing so that it becomes airworthy and become the 5th generation drone or 5th generation aircraft. This is how you have to do. We did the same thing for a 3D printing machine. We did the same thing for the hybrid which we have made. We did the same thing for a whole lot of other innovations. Delhi, Amity University Gurgaon, therefore is deeply committed to support the student community, both from within as well as by our partnership with the industry. Our focus is on industrialization and globalization together. That's why we are looking at our global partners also as the major support and catalyst in this direction. I would speak a little bit more when the turn comes, but I think for the time being, let me leave you with this thought that the gold mine of opportunity for spinning off innovations leading to startups exist in the campuses of the universities and institutions of higher learning. And I'm hesitant to add that the same gold mine opportunity also exists at the school level, because I cannot undermine the innovative and creative talent which our students have even at the secondary school or middle school level. After all, my grandson, who is still in the class 4, is making the next generation car in his school in America. And here, the other grandson is now asking me, give me the challenge of solving the climate change, Dada, I want to rise to that challenge, and he is implementing some solution. That is the potential, and we have to identify, recognize that and support it. I will leave you with these thoughts for the timing and come back again if you have any further clarifications as how to make a success story in that direction. But Bali sir has done a great job. FITT was the first and still remains as the only foundation, except that we supplemented you by establishing Foundation for Science, Technology and Innovation Foundation at Amity University, ASTIF, of which Dr. Silvamurthy is the president. This is how we are steering innovations in our entire Amity University. Thank you, Dr. Bali.
So that was relevance, innovation, need, nirvana, money. Professor P.V. Sharma at his best, and very correctly he did emphasize on the need to identify challenges, because these are the ones which actually help you build solutions and actually create billion-dollar enterprises. And certainly when he talks about creating an innovation fund at his university, certainly speaks eloquently about his leadership skills. Thank you, sir. We move on, and now Professor Bhardwaj, who is the director at MNIT Jaipur. Sir, in the context of the present day role models that the students look at, and what is your take on the interest levels of students in your institution? Because generally we talk of IITs all the time, but of course NITs or RECs earlier on, regional engineering colleges, are equally great institutions. So I would just want to know how enthusiastic are students about giving a startup shape to their ideas?
Thank you, Mr. Wali, and good afternoon to everyone. It's really a pleasure for me to be here today. Before I just proceed further, I would like to recall the two questions, and one question, one thought, maybe on the lighter side. When Mr. Yogesh asked, how many of these kids would like to be an entrepreneur? And there were two hands were raised. When we talk that our youth, in terms of entrepreneurship, are among the top in the world, only two. Are we somewhere misleading? When Professor Mahajan gave somewhat tried to answer, why are they here? Maybe for lunch? Anyway, it's on lighter side, but definitely we have to think in a serious way. Where are we lacking primarily? I had been with Mr. Nirankar with the NSTDP for more than 6 years, evaluating all kinds of entrepreneurial development programs. And we found that our students are definitely either not aware of, or hesitant, or basically definitely away from innovations. Some is very small innovations they are doing, otherwise it's all monotonous. It was a story a few years back. I would like to just, I don't take much time, but I would like to give you a complete pathway we have traveled. I would like to give another example. One of entrepreneur, he was an entrepreneur, he got some very good opportunity from a multinational automobile making company to have a design system at Jaipur, in India primarily. And when he came to our institute, being quite active in the entrepreneurial development, It was, we discussed with the Department of Industry. In fact, I should say, I don't say that it's a situation everywhere. I'm from the state where, which has given a lot many entrepreneurs, but developed in another state, not in Rajasthan. They simply asked, probably it was quoted earlier also, that what is our total investment? He told a few computers, few printer, and one or two software. Oh no, sorry. Then we can't help you much until you have some hardcore machines to install, which has crores and crores of investment. And ultimately, he has to shift to Pune. Anyway, systems are improving. I thank Prime Minister and because when statistics was given about the 96 TBIs across the country, and government has initiated that it should be established in all institutes of national importance right now. We already got the mandate for that. Which I just, as Mr. Wali asked that how the research, how the students are related to the research, how enthusiastic they are about the research in NIT, or I should say in any institute, I should say. Before saying to that, I would like to quote an example of your own institute, Mr. Wali. I got a chance to visit maybe in about 6 months before to IIT Delhi, and I found a wonderful course over there, which they run in the first year of their engineering, where the students collect the garbage from the whole institute, do whatever they like to create something new. And I saw those, I was shown some of the projects over there. They are all first year students. Some outputs on the YouTube also I watched. And some of the outcomes were really wonderful. Can't we do it at everywhere? Students are same. Let me tell you, whether they are at NITs, whether they are at IITs, it's a marginal difference, which was the reason of that particular day. They missed this one or that one. We have wonderful resources. They just need a spark, some initiation from the faculty, and they do wonders. I can share with you, you please, all those from education institutions, please go back and see the final year project reports of your own students. You'll find so many wonderful innovations which are kept, and no one tried. We need to promote those. And definitely, the students, as only 2 responded, it simply means that probably they are somewhere unaware of. They are hesitant to say that, yes, we have idea. They are not knowing, even if I say I have idea, how will I go ahead? Probably we are again lacking to provide a complete ecosystem in education institutions. Either we try to totally isolate them, or we make them a parasite on the government funding, which are again of no use. He's not the entrepreneur who is totally dependent on those. We never talk about the quality initiatives. Most of the startups fail. It's because they never think that, they never put themselves in the shoes of the customer and ask themselves that, are we going to purchase the same product or service which we are offering to others? They never ask. We start with our contentions that whatever we produce, customer is a fool and he'll purchase. And probably here we lose that. It's a very short-term gain. When we talk about NITs, I should say, what I just discussed was the story of a bit past. At least I can tell about my institute and other NITs which I visited. Things are changing at a very fast pace. When we talk about the innovations, definitely faculty has an important role to play. Earlier, we were having a system that if you do some research, your output will be some in terms of publications or like that. And if some kind of innovation or some commercialization of technology is developed, that is a byproduct. I should say, at NITs, in most of the NITs, we have reversed the system. All research is we are trying to focus on technology commercialization, technology transfer, and definitely publication, etc., that will come as byproduct itself. So that's a change we have made. Another change which we have tried to brought was about what Mr. Len told was exactly the same thing I would like to repeat. We started to have a tolerance for failures. Unless we accept failures, we can't promote creativity. If we can't promote creativity, we can't go for innovations. Then the third thing which we try to develop is about the accumulating and gathering our alumni who are first generation entrepreneurs. All NITs have, and IITs, and I know most of the institutions have a good alumni base who are the first generation entrepreneurs. They have come up, they have joined themselves, and they are nurturing in terms of mentoring, in terms of the financing, all our students. And that's the reason that when earlier, maybe now a few years before, we were not having even we were having one or two budding entrepreneurs or incubatees. Now we have in our incubation center more than 20 startups which are working. I know we are just lacking lack of time, and we will discuss further if once.
Sorry, actually I have to curtail the flow, and I feel anguished when I have to actually request my members to go slow on that. But anyway, the time, we have to look at that watch. I think Professor Bhardwaj did very nicely articulate the changing patterns of thinking, that mindset about the way people have started looking at innovations and entrepreneurship from academia. I don't know, and when he asked how many of you would want to be entrepreneurs, let me rephrase the question and ask you, how many of you are actually innovators and would want to become an entrepreneur? How many of you are fascinated by people like Thomas Alva Edison or Steve Jobs? If you're going. Okay, should I presume that you are great academics? Now let me give you an example of Professor George Whitesides. Professor George Whitesides is a professor in Harvard University. अब छोटी मोटी यूनिवर्सिटी का नाम नहीं लिया, Harvard ले लिया, ranking mates at the very top. Now this gentleman, for a long time, nearly a decade, was the highest cited author for 10 years in a running, or maybe 1 or 2, whatever, in the area of biological, chemical, and material sciences from Harvard University. The only thing the poor chap has not got so far is the Nobel Prize. Okay? Now, if you in your spare time, just Google and try to find out his profile. The gentleman, apart from a prolific researcher, publisher, lot of patents, also has spun off a lot of companies from his research. And when I last had seen his report, the market cap of his companies out of his research, was only $11 billion US. Now that is a little dated. Maybe you can have a fresh look at what is when the market caps go up and down, because the stock markets play wild sometimes. And as per a previous report, 400 startups were getting created in US alone from federally funded research. And I don't want to give you the success rate of academic startups, which is very impressive. And if I even give you statistics about the research monetization from some of the top universities. I'm not giving you the entire list, like Northwestern or Cornell or Harvard. You will be impressed with the size, the kind of monetization that happens from academia. और लोग कहते हैं कि academics को research करनी नहीं आती या business करना नहीं आता है. 90% of Nobel laureates in medicine are from academia. I can go on and go on, start giving you some examples. But the crux of the matter is, while you can do top class research, you can jolly well also do top class innovations, and much of your research work can monetize and create huge wealth, huge economic opportunity for people around us, for the community. Now, enough of money and money and money, or rather economic growth. Now, let me give you a different perspective. So, I would invite Shri Malay Garg and request him to, if he can, maybe give us his philosophical take on the motivation of academics to take up commercialization of their knowledge. Shri Garg, please.
From the topic of the day, I'll use only two words: spin-off and academia. I'm spinning off from technology, innovation, but I'm sticking to science. What I'm trying to draw your attention this evening is very different from what has been discussed here. The idea today is to compare if we had what was the progress of science earlier and what it is today. What are some of the assumptions that science is making today, and all in the name of science, and what was the science available to us in the past? So this is a slight spin-off. Actually, I'm in a place where I ought to feel out of place, but I want to make you feel in place by what I'm going to say now. So let me, because of paucity of time, it can't be a structured talk, but I'll try and be very, very brief. Let me get into some examples straight away. For any kind of knowledge, there has to be a knower and there has to be a known. The interaction between the knower and the known is knowledge. In the absence of a knower, there can't be knowledge. In the absence of a known, there can't be knowledge. So this is one. Two, now, when you are in deep sleep, when you wake up, you stand up and exclaim that I slept like a log. Sit back, ask yourself a question. How did you get this knowledge that you slept like a log? What was conscious? Who was aware of this kind of knowledge? How did you have this? Did your wife tell you about it? Did your daughter or anybody else or your roommate, XYZ? If you are alone, you still have that experience that last night I slept like a log. So therefore, even when you are sleeping like a log, there is something conscious in you which is aware that the next morning, which tells you, gives you the knowledge that you slept like a log. Two. Now, let us examine, so that I can cut out a longer discussion, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution. He's virtually God for the last over 150, 160 years, since 1850s, since he theorized his theory of evolution. Now, he said matter has evolved from simplistic to more evolved species through a process of random selection. Now, let us ask one question, two questions rather. The one, why only evolution? His theory doesn't answer this. What ensures that evolution? The theory doesn't talk about it. Now, something has to be conscious of this evolution, right? That also is not answered. Why not degeneration? That is also not answered. So, Charles Darwin's theory of evolution is virtually incomplete. It doesn't answer any of these questions, right? Now, the most important question which it doesn't answer is, how has consciousness evolved? I'm not talking of the conscience, and I'm talking of consciousness. The answer as we speak or as we are here is that there is consciousness, is a random happy accident. Mind you, we have developed such a huge theory of evolution. fundamental questions remain unanswered. And you'll be surprised, people who have differed with Charles Darwin, they have been virtually exorcised. I can give you an example. I'll give that example a little later. So this is 3. Now, therefore, there has to be a knower, a consciousness which is conscious of all change, whether it is evolution or it is degeneration or anything else, because there has to be a knower. Even Einstein, he said that an observer has to be there before you postulate knowledge. Right? So now, therefore, in everything, there is a consciousness embedded, right from the smallest atom to in the microcosm to the macrocosm. A knower is there, an illuminer is there, and everything else is getting illumined. That is how knowledge is there. Whether it was the Big Bang evolution of the universe, or it will be a brick crunch dissolution of the universe, that knower has to be there. Otherwise, there cannot be any awareness, there cannot be any kind of illumination in the absence of the illuminer. Therefore, there is a consciousness in each of us. Now the question arises, taking it further.
मेरे भगवान, लेकिन कुछ विषय तो अलग है हमारा आज.
This
We
is
are
what
trying to understand how to give rise to
Professor
startup.
Saab, I'm sorry for that. This was supposed to be a standalone lecture, and but unfortunately in the format it couldn't be fixed in. But it is talking about science. It is talking about innovative thinking. Kindly give me time. And I said in the beginning that I am in a place where I ought to be out of place.
मैं समझ रहा हूँ, लेकिन जब हम डिस्कस ये कर रहे हैं कि हाउ टू बूस्ट स्टार्टअप इन आवर कैंपसेस, how are we going to spend time on learning about the theory of evolution or science of consciousness or science of soul or through the science of
I'm
God?
not talking of any of those things. Anyway, please allow me a little time. I seek your indulgence, Professor Sharma. So, there is a consciousness in each one of us, right? It is aware of our birth, it is aware of our death, it is aware of our evolution, it is aware of our degeneration. Now, a question arises, is this consciousness in you, in me, in all individuals, in the past or in the future, are these different consciousnesses? So, if they are different, let's presume they are, right? If they are different, it means there are innumerable and it renders them finite. Anything more than one is finite. If it is finite, it is subject to change, it is subject to evolution, it is subject to degeneration, it is subject to mutation, or it is mutable. So it can be born, it can die. Therefore, that consciousness, which is the individual, so-called individual consciousnesses in us, can die. As I said, something has to be aware of the birth or death of that consciousness. So we'll have to assume a changeless consciousness which is beyond the innumerable consciousnesses in us, right? And if we assume that there is that changeless consciousness which is conscious of all the consciousnesses around, right? That is one possibility. Now, if these two consciousnesses are entirely distinct, the changeless consciousness and the changeful innumerable consciousnesses in us, if they are different, then both of these are rendered finite. Therefore, the changeless consciousness in us is also finite. It is also subject to change, to death, to birth, to everything. So we can go back and then say, okay, there could be another one. But the simple truth is, there is only one consciousness. And this is the innovation that I want you to think about today. That same consciousness, my friends, permeates in each one of us. The illumined are different. The illuminer is one and the same. That is one. Now, one more step beyond this. If this one consciousness that exists in the entire universe, which illumines each and every iota of this cosmos, anywhere, whether we are aware of it today or not, whatever, right? If it is different from the illumined world entirely different, then even both these will become, finite. So therefore, by simple logic, there is only one existence, only one consciousness, and this existence is that part. And our philosophy, our logic embedded in our philosophy answered this more than 5,000 years ago, right? So there is only one truth, one existence, the higher and the lower consciousnesses, the higher existence and the lower changeful existence. So this is one thing which I want you to deliberate about. We are all one to that extent. Now, I'll make anybody who wants to walk away for tea, I'll have no objections. But if you can allow me to bite into your biscuit for a couple of more minutes, I'll be very grateful.
Leave some space for questions. Actually, that's actually unfair to them because I.
Okay, I'll take a couple of more minutes.
Otherwise, eating into the other session.
No, something wonderful is about to come, Doctor.
Okay, take
a few more minutes, yeah. Okay, so this is one part. As I said, now the other thing is, let me talk about the Big Bang theory, the evolution of the universe. Initially, the Big Bang theory said that suddenly, accidentally, out of nothing, this universe emerged 13.7 to 14.5 billion years ago. So, it was postulated that time that hydrogen, helium, possibly lithium, these three molecules came around, and over, innumerable billions of years, lots of time, they evolved into planets, stars, and primate life started growing 3.6 billion years ago, and from primate life we have grown, right? So that was originally. Now, they have changed the theory. They have now started saying that, okay, there was a singularity, what was called Hiranyagarbha in Indian philosophy aeons ago. They have now admitted that there is a singularity. Now, even for this singularity, that a small speck, which they have speculated, has a density of 5.1 into 10 to the power of 96 kind of thing. So they said that this kind of singularity now exists, and that somehow time, space, matter, energy, everything evolved out of this singularity. But there is still, till date, there is no agreement whether this if space has come out of this, where was this singularity suspended? So this is a major assumption which science has not answered, but our philosophy has answered long ago. Now, I can go on. Unfortunately, I have to stop, but it is my misfortune that I can't communicate what I wanted to communicate. Anyway, I have addressed all these questions in a book which I have penned, and this book is available for anybody who would like to have it. Thank you for your indulgence.
No. So it would have been wonderful had we got more time to actually listen to Malayaji, but samay ka taqaza, we have to wind up, but not before we actually give the floor to the audience to actually ask questions. As a matter of fact, some of the questions which you had asked in the earlier session would have been perhaps addressed by people out here. So I think you're free to ask questions, but I think given the time schedule that we have, should we permit 3 questions? Okay, 3-4 points. Okay, the floor is open. Even I'm open to questions, please.
Yeah, gentleman over there, yes.
Yes, please.
Shout it out very well, or just switch on the microphone. On your shout at the top of your voice then.
The question is that nowadays, like in institutions, placement is going on. Right? So why the media is so crashing those values on the placement jobs values that value in the parents' mind, so that the parents want to secure future of their child rather than taking risk. So shouldn't institution take a step forward to give a sense of security? And if you start that I am with you, to promote startup rather than
Very good question and quick answer. Without placement, you wouldn't take admission as of today because admissions are driven by placement. I am known primarily because 1.25 crore per annum job has come to DTU. See, but I want to change this. And I know I cannot change it, you will change it. Many of my students today who are graduating from Amity University as well as from leading universities of the country, they are saying, I don't want to be placed. The students who made that aeroplane, which is in the exhibit here, they negated placement. They said, hell with your job, I want to be a millionaire, I want to attend Nirvana as well as mint money together. See? So that class of people now are coming up, and you will find in the years to come, maybe couple of years time, many of you would say that I want to attend Nirvana as well as mint money to be an entrepreneur, a new age entrepreneur, a startup from my university campus, and you will negate placement. But yes, as an institutional strategy, it's very important for us also to play the role of a catalyst, which means the institution must identify this as a major opportunity to identify students with intuitive faculty being very high, who are in a position to think with ingenuity and originality, employ their innovativeness, and support them. And that's how Amity has Amity Incubator in Amity University. And I'm setting another one at Gurgaon. We have to support our student community so that gradually you will find there is a rise of a startup and negation of the job. India was great, my friend, let me say this, because all Indians were enterprising. India became poor because we became dependent on jobs to be given by somebody else. I have seen that time in my childhood when every Indian was enterprising. Nobody will depend on somebody employing. In fact, नौकरी करना तो बहुत बड़ी बेइज्जती मानी जाती थी हमारे टाइम पर जब हम स्टूडेंट थे, ये फैक्ट है। और आज नौकरी करने के लिए तो बड़े बड़े, मैंने अपने बेटे से भी कहा नौकरी कर, बोला कि वाइस चांसलर का बेटा नौकरी करेगा। आप मुझसे कहते कि अच्छी बढ़िया किताब लेके ये कर तो बात बनती, but this is what that. But the departure is coming. Just wait for a few more years. If this government mission of a startup really kicks off very well, for which we will support from our universities, you will find that the time will come much sooner than anticipated.
Thank you.
All the institutions are trying hard to address this issue, and not only in terms of like a deferred placement, we are already allowed, and most of the institutes have allowed now. Those who are having innovative ideas, they are getting their companies incubated. They are allowed to go for their companies, and in case of any problem, they are allowed to go for the placement. The deferred placement is already on the card, and it is practiced by so many institutes. Also, we are trying to have your final year projects. In case someone is having incubating their ideas, we convert that complete work as their final year project. So
let me just quickly add that many of these innovators, they don't become overnight rich. You need to support them even after graduation. My Deputy Vice Chancellor General Suhag is here. We took a resolve that we will make them teaching cum research associate in our own university till such time they stand on their feet and say, sir, now my earning from startup is really good.
So we got a very comprehensive answer to many questions.
One very good point, Professor Sharma, I'd like to inform you. I am from Birla Institute of Technology. I did my computer science. That will help these kind of kids tomorrow to know.
Can we have another question, please? कुछ भी पूछो यार, कुछ क्रेडिट नहीं कटेगा.
That much of capital, venture capitalists, sir. So try to concentrate on innovation services. When you, if you have time, please consider my website, cabibase.com. Just I invented 360 rupees only on that, and with that 360 rupees, I started cabibase.com, and it is in initial stage. Maybe in future it will come into moonlight. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Just a quick one. I mean, so yeah, all services companies have traditionally been what India has been doing. Okay, so mostly if you look at the 80s, since the software services became, we've been just doing services. The current government's push is to look at Make in India, which is all about manufacturing. Yeah, so yes, the seeking money, you don't need money for services. In fact, I as a venture capitalist would not like to invest in any services company, because services company is cash business. You do some service today, you get paid at the end of the month. Why do you need to raise capital? For what? For hiring people? If you want to hire people, they will leave you. So there's no value in investing in them.
But
Okay?
the point is really good because service sector innovations require no support from outside.
Yep.
They require very little support, if at all any. And therefore, we can accelerate service sector innovations much faster than the product innovations and incubating large size industries from the startup. That will take time. But service sector innovation is much faster. For example, if you think of creating a website by offering a service, identify your doctor for your dog. I mean, could be a great help. I was searching, my dog was in trouble. I did not know where to take him. My son said, okay, there is a service provider. He will tell you which the nearest best clinic and also the rating which they have generated by taking Facebook accounts. And believe me, that was a service. All he said, you have to pay a little bit of money. If you don't pay, he will take some advertisement of some industry or a university over there and service sector innovation. So service sector innovations can
please.
rise very fast.
Yeah, please tell us.
There are many people who've never been to a college and are great entrepreneurs. And there are many examples of that. So, you can talk about tools to help aid a entrepreneur, but entrepreneurship, I don't know, it's like, it's something that comes from within. I don't know how much.
I'm not talking about the entrepreneurship or the risk-taking ability.
Yeah.
I'm talking about, say, today we are talking about
Excuse me, can we leave something for offline dialogues, please?
Yeah.
So I
Let's
think
take that
let's
offline.
formally call it a close now. And I would.
This was a very interesting point, I think, very interesting question. There are two routes to innovation or startups. One is that you go and work somewhere and learn the tricks of the trade and then come back and set up your own organization. It might have been done by Dhirubhai Ambani. He learned how a textile industry works and he became a great giant. That route is possible. But there is a second route, that you will not go anywhere for learning and you would yourself become an entrepreneur. Bill Gates is an example in that direction. So really speaking, both routes are available. Some of my brilliant students don't bother to go and join a job. They would rather learn all the tricks of the trade during their paid internship, for which they have gone to the industry. They have understood the processes, they have understood the methods and measuring tools of performance, productivity and quality. And therefore for them that experience which they gain during their industrial training and internship becomes a valid means to give rise to startup. So you don't have.
Sir, I'll have to interject here. I think let me use that discretionary power to interject. I suppose, first of all, let me thank the audience for being extremely patient and thoughtful throughout. And to my very distinguished panelists, thanks a lot, sir.
I'm sure science is great, technology is great, but it's in the end about making money.
Nirvana plus making money through innovation.